Captain David Bell had always hated the Wadi Mountains. Not because of the treacherous terrain or the thin air that made every breath a struggle, but because of the memories that clung to those jagged peaks like morning fog. 10 years ago, as a green recruit barely out of basic training, he'd watched his mentor die in these very mountains. At least, that's what the official report said. Maya Rodriguez had been the kind of soldier legends were made of. Call sign Crossfire, she could put a bullet through a dime at 800 yards in a windstorm. More importantly, she'd taken Bell under her wing when he was just another scared kid who'd never seen combat. She taught him to read the wind, to breathe between heartbeats, to think 3 moves ahead of the enemy. 1 shot, 1 ghost, she used to say, adjusting his scope with steady hands. The target never sees it coming, and neither does anyone else. Now Bell commanded his own unit, the 3rd Platoon of the 57th Infantry, and he was leading them through the same valley where Maya had vanished. The mission was supposed to be routine reconnaissance training, map the terrain, identify potential ambush points, practice radio protocols. Nothing that should have made his hand shake as he gripped his rifle. But something felt wrong from the moment they'd crossed into the valley. His point man, Sergeant Jake Morrison, held up a closed fist. The platoon froze. Morrison's voice crackled through the radio. "Sir, we've got movement on the ridge. 2 clicks north." Bell raised his binoculars, scanning the tree line. Nothing. But the hair on the back of his neck stood up anyway. This was exactly how it had started 10 years ago. Reports of movement. Shadows that vanished when you looked directly at them. The feeling of being watched by invisible eyes. "Probably just mountain goats," Bell said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Continue the sweep." Private Tommy Chun, no. He caught himself. Chun wasn't on this mission. Private Tommy Walsh, the youngest member of the platoon, shifted nervously. Beside him, "Sir, is it true what they say about this place? About the ghost sniper?" Bell's jaw tightened. The story had spread through the ranks over the years, growing more elaborate with each telling. Some said Maya's spirit still haunted the mountains, protecting American soldiers from beyond the grave. Others claimed she'd never died at all, that she'd chosen to stay behind and become a one-woman army against anyone who threatened her brothers and sisters in arms. "Focus on the mission, Walsh," Bell said. "Ghosts don't shoot back." But even as he said it, he remembered the last transmission Maya had sent before her team was overrun. Her voice had been steady, professional, even as enemy fire tore through their position. "Bell, get the wounded out. I'll hold them off." He'd been dragged to the extraction point, screaming her name as the helicopter lifted off. 3 days later, when the rescue team finally reached their position, they found only empty shell casings and bloodstains. Maya's body was never recovered. The platoon moved deeper into the valley, following a dry creek bed that provided some cover from the ridgelines above. Bell's radio operator, Corporal Lisa Martinez, suddenly grabbed his arm. "Sir, our comms are being jammed. I can't raise base command." Bell felt his blood turn to ice. "Say again?" "All frequencies are down, sir." Someone's running active interference. This wasn't part of the training exercise. Bell had checked the scenario parameters himself. No electronic warfare components. No opposing force elements, nothing that should have disrupted their communications. He raised his hand to signal a halt, but before he could speak, the crack of a rifle shot echoed across the valley. Walsh cried out, clutching his shoulder as blood seeped through his uniform. A second shot kicked up dirt and inches from Bell's feet. "Contact, take cover," Bell shouted, but there was nowhere to go. The creek bed that had seemed like perfect cover moments before had become a killing field. They were trapped in the open, with an enemy sniper commanding the high ground. More shots rang out, each one precise and methodical. Morrison went down with a bullet in his leg. Martinez dove behind a boulder, her radio sparking from a direct hit. Bell counted at least 3 different firing positions on the ridgeline. They were facing multiple snipers, with professional-grade equipment. "Sir, what are your orders?" Martinez called out, her voice tight with pain. Bell closed his eyes and whispered the same prayer he'd said 10 years ago. "Maya, if you're still out there, we could really use some help." The enemy fire intensified, pinning them down completely. Bell could hear his soldiers' ragged breathing, could smell the metallic scent of blood and cordite. They were sitting ducks, and the enemy snipers were taking their time, picking their shots carefully. Then, suddenly, everything went quiet. A single rifle shot cracked from somewhere high above, different from the others, deeper, more authoritative. The enemy fire stopped immediately, as if a switch had been thrown. Bell lifted his head cautiously, scanning the ridgeline through his scope. For just a moment, he caught a glimpse of a silhouette against the sky, a figure holding a long-range rifle, standing exactly where Maya used to position herself during training exercises. The figure melted back into the tree line before he could focus properly. "Sir," Walsh whispered, his voice filled with awe. "Did you see that? Someone just saved our lives." Bell stared at the ridge where the shot had come from. Base Command would later confirm that no friendly units were operating in that sector. The enemy snipers were found dead, each killed by a single shot from a .50 caliber rifle that wasn't standard military issue. But Bell knew better. He'd seen that shooting signature before, had watched Maya make impossible shots from that exact position. As his wounded soldiers were evacuated and the incident was classified as a training accident, Bell made a decision that would change everything. Maya Rodriguez wasn't dead. She was still out there, still protecting soldiers like him, still fighting a war that everyone else thought was over, and he was going to prove it. The official report labeled it a training incident involving unidentified hostile forces. 3 soldiers wounded, no fatalities. Enemy casualties confirmed, but bodies removed before investigation. Case closed, according to Colonel Harrison, Bell's commanding officer. But Bell couldn't let it go. He spent the next 3 weeks digging through classified reports, using his security clearance to access files that should have been buried years ago. What he found made his hand shake as he read. 7 separate incidents in the past year, all in the Wadi Mountains. Different units, different missions, but the same pattern. American forces pinned down by enemy snipers. Then sudden silence followed by confirmed enemy kills from unknown positions. Each time, the mysterious sniper vanished without a trace. The kills were surgical, professional single shots to the head or chest from extreme range. The ballistics reports, when they existed at all, showed .50 caliber rounds consistent with a Barrett M82 rifle. Military grade, but not current issue. Bell knew that rifle. Maya had preferred the Barrett for long-range work, had customized hers with a specialized suppressor and enhanced optics. If she was still alive, still operating in those mountains, she'd be using the same weapon. "You're chasing ghosts, David." The voice belonged to Major Robert Kane, Bell's former squad leader and one of the few people who'd known Maya personally. They were sitting in Kane's office at Fort Braxton, sharing a bottle of bourbon that Kane kept hidden in his desk drawer. "Maybe," Bell said, refilling his glass. "But what if I'm not? What if she's still out there?" Kane leaned back in his chair, studying Bell's face. "You really think Maya faked her death? Went rogue and spent 10 years playing guardian angel in the mountains? Look at the evidence, Rob. The timing, the locations, the shooting signatures. It's all consistent with someone who knows those mountains intimately. Someone with advanced sniper training. It's also consistent with local militia using captured equipment," Ken countered. "Or special forces operations we're not cleared to know about." Bell pulled out a manila folder and and slid it across the desk. Then explain this. Kane opened the folder and went pale. Inside were satellite images from the past 6 months, showing heat signatures on the ridgelines during each incident. The thermal patterns were consistent, a single individual, moving with tactical precision, always departing the area within minutes of engagement. How did you get these? Kane asked. I still have friends in intelligence. They owe me a few favors. Belle leaned forward. Look at the movement patterns, Rob. The way she positions herself, the route she takes. It's textbook Maya Rodriguez. Kane studied the images, his expression growing more troubled. Even if you're right, even if she's somehow still alive, she's been declared Kia. Officially, she doesn't exist. You can't just waltz into the mountains looking for a dead woman. I'm not going to look for her, Belle said. I'm going to make her come to me. Kane raised an eyebrow. How? Belle smiled grimly. By putting myself in the same position she saved me from 10 years ago. If Maya's still protecting soldiers in those mountains, she won't be able to resist helping again. That's insane. You're talking about using yourself as bait, not just me. I'm going to request a special training mission advanced reconnaissance in the Wadi Mountains. Small unit, minimal support. Perfect target for enemy snipers. Kane stared at him. You're planning to get your own people killed, just to prove a point? I'm planning to create a situation where Maya has no choice but to reveal herself. If she's still alive, she won't let American soldiers die on her watch. Kane was quiet for a long moment, swirling the bourbon in his glass. Finally, he spoke. Maya saved my life once too, you know. During the Kandahar operation, 5 years. Before she disappeared. I was pinned down by 3 enemy snipers, ammunition running low, no way out. Then suddenly, all 3 tangos were down. Never saw the shooter, never got confirmation of who made those shots. Belle felt his pulse quicken. You never reported it? What was I supposed to report? That someone mysteriously saved my life. Command would have laughed me out of the service. Kane met Belle's eyes, but I've always wondered. The shooting was too clean, too precise. It reminded me of Maya's work. Help me, Rob. I need someone I trust to coordinate from base command. Someone who believes she might still be out there. Kane finished his bourbon and set the glass down with a decisive click. What do you need? Belle pulled out a second folder. This one contained detailed mission plans. I need you to authorize a high-risk reconnaissance mission. Something that looks legitimate but puts us in maximum danger. Maya won't be able to resist. Kane flipped through the plans, his frown deepening. This is suicide, David. You're talking about taking a small unit into the most dangerous terrain in the region, with minimal support and no backup plan. That's the point. It has to be real. Maya's too smart to fall for a staged operation. She'll know if we're faking it. And if you're wrong, if she's really dead, and you're just walking into an ambush. Belle met his friend's eyes. Then I'll die knowing I tried to find the truth. But I don't think I'm wrong, Rob. I can feel her out there. She's been watching, waiting, protecting soldiers like me for 10 years. It's time someone protected her back. Kane closed the folder and locked it in his desk drawer. I'll need 48 hours to set this up. And David? If this goes sideways, if you get your people killed chasing a ghost, I'll make sure you never wear a uniform again. Understood. As Belle left Kane's office, he felt a mixture of excitement and terror. He was either about to reunite with the greatest soldier he'd ever known, or he was about to lead his men into a trap that would get them all killed. But for the first time in 10 years, he felt like he was finally doing something that mattered. Maya had never abandoned him, had never stopped fighting for the soldiers under her protection. Now it was his turn to fight for her. The mission. Briefing was scheduled for 0800 hours, but Belle arrived at the conference room 30 minutes early. He needed time to settle his nerves, to prepare for the performance of his life. If Maya was still out there, still monitoring military communications, she would be listening to every word. Major Kane entered precisely on time, followed by Bell's handpicked team. Sergeant Morrison, his leg wound from the previous encounter had healed. Corporal Martinez, and 2 soldiers he'd never worked with before, Staff Sergeant Jennifer Walsh and Private First Class Marcus Torres. Fresh faces meant fewer questions about his real motives. "Gentlemen, ladies," Kane began, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd seen real combat. "You've been selected for Operation Crosswind, a high-priority reconnaissance mission in the Wadi Mountains." Bell watched his team's faces as Kane outlined the mission parameters. They would be inserted by helicopter at dawn, tasked with mapping enemy positions and identifying potential staging areas for a larger operation. No air support, minimal radio contact, and a 72-hour window to complete their objectives. "Sir," Morrison raised his hand, "this is the same area where we took casualties last month. Intelligence reports suggest increased enemy activity in that sector." "Correct, Sergeant. That's exactly why we need boots on the ground. Satellite imagery isn't enough. We need human intelligence on enemy capabilities and intentions." Walsh frowned. "With respect, sir, wouldn't a larger force be more appropriate? 6 soldiers seems insufficient for a reconnaissance mission of this scope." Kane's expression didn't change, but Bell saw the slight tightening around his eyes. This was the part of the plan that made them both uncomfortable. "Larger units are easier to detect. We need speed and stealth, not overwhelming firepower." Bell stood up, knowing it was time to sell the deception. "I've operated in this terrain before. I know the routes, the hiding spots, the tactical advantages. We go in light, we move fast, we get out clean." "What about extraction?" Torres asked. "If we run into trouble, how do we get out?" "Emergency extraction will be available if needed," Kane said. "But the expectation is that you'll avoid contact entirely. This is reconnaissance, not combat." Bell saw Morrison and Martinez exchange a look. They'd been with him during the last encounter, had seen what happened when things went wrong in the Wadi Mountains. They knew the risks better than anyone. "Any questions?" Kane asked. The room was silent. Bell felt a knot of guilt in his stomach. These were good soldiers, professionals who trusted him with their lives. He was about to put them in mortal danger, based on nothing more than a hunch and 10 years of wishful thinking. But if he was right, if Maya was still out there, she would never let them die. "Mission launch is at 0600 tomorrow," Kane announced. "Full combat mode, 3 days of supplies. Maintain radio silence unless absolutely necessary. Dismissed." As the team filed out, Kane caught Bell's arm. "Last chance to call this off, David. Once that helicopter drops you in the mountains, you're committed." Bell looked at his friend, seeing the concern in his weathered face. "I'm committed already, Rob. I have been for 10 years. That night, Bell couldn't sleep. He lay in his bunk, staring at the ceiling and running through every possible scenario. What if Maya was dead? What if she moved to a different area? What if she was alive, but had become something else entirely, a rogue operator who no longer cared about protecting American soldiers? At 0300 hours, he gave up on sleep and walked to the base communications center. The night shift operator, a young specialist named Davis, looked up in surprise. "Sir, is everything okay?" "I need to send a message," Bell said. "Coded transmission, maximum encryption." Davis's fingers flew over the keyboard. "What's the message, sir?" Bell stared at the screen, knowing that if Maya was monitoring communications, she would understand the reference. "Eagle requesting assistance. Bravo element entering your sector. Tomorrow, protect the flock." "Sir, that's not standard military protocol. Send it," Bell ordered. and route it through the old Ghost Recon encryption key, the one that was decommissioned 10 years ago. Davis looked confused but complied. As the message transmitted, Bell felt a chill run down his spine. If Maya was out there, she would know that someone was trying to reach her. She would know that the soldier she'd saved 10 years ago was walking back into her domain. And she would be ready. Bell returned to his quarters and managed to catch 2 hours of restless sleep. He dreamed of Maya standing on a ridge with her rifle, her face obscured by shadows. In the dream, she was trying to tell him something, but her voice was lost in the wind. He woke to the sound of his alarm, feeling more exhausted than when he'd gone to bed. But as he dressed in his combat gear and checked his equipment, he felt a strange sense of peace. After 10 years of wondering, of haunting memories and unanswered questions, he was finally going to learn the truth. The helicopter ride to the insertion point was unusually quiet. Morrison and Martinez were focused on their equipment checks, while Walsh and Torres reviewed their sector maps. Bell stared out the window at the mountains below, searching for any sign of movement on the ridgelines. 2 minutes to insertion, the pilot announced over the intercom. Bell felt his heart rate spike. In 2 minutes, he would be back in the day. Mountains where Maya had disappeared, where she might still be waiting, where he might finally get the answers he'd been seeking for a decade. The helicopter touched down in a small clearing, and Bell's team quickly disembarked. As the aircraft lifted off, leaving them alone in the wilderness, Bell raised his binoculars and scanned the surrounding ridges. Somewhere out there, Maya Rodriguez was watching. He could feel it in his bones, the same sensation he'd experienced 10 years ago when she'd first taken him under her wing. The feeling of being protected by someone who understood the true cost of warfare. "Sir," Morrison whispered, "I've got movement on the North Ridge." "Same position as last time." Bell smiled grimly. The trap was set, and Maya had taken the bait. Now all they had to do was survive long enough for her to make her move. The first 12 hours passed without incident. Bell's team moved through the familiar terrain with practiced efficiency, mapping potential ambush sites and documenting enemy positions. But Bell could feel eyes on them the entire time, not just Maya's protective watch, but something else. Something hostile. At 1800 hours, they established a temporary observation post on a rocky outcrop that provided clear views of 3 valleys. Morrison was adjusting his rangefinder when he suddenly froze. "Sir, we've got company. Multiple positions north and east ridgelines." Bell raised his binoculars, scanning the terrain. At first, he saw nothing but rocks and sparse vegetation. Then a glint of metal caught his eye, the unmistakable reflection of a rifle scope. Then another and another. "Count 6 positions," Martinez whispered into her radio. "Professional spacing, overlapping fields of fire. They've been watching." U.S. Bell's blood ran cold. This wasn't the random encounter he'd been expecting. This was a coordinated ambush, planned and executed by someone who knew exactly where they would be. "Someone sold us out," Walsh muttered, checking her ammunition. "No," Bell said quietly. "Someone's been tracking our communications. They knew we were coming." The implications hit him like a physical blow. If hostile forces had been monitoring their radio traffic, they would have intercepted his coded message to Maya. They would know that an American unit was expecting protection from an unknown sniper, and they would be ready for her. Bell realized with growing horror that he hadn't just put his own team at risk, he'd potentially compromised Maya's position after 10 years of successful operations. The enemy wasn't just hunting American soldiers anymore. They were hunting the ghost who'd been protecting them. "Sir," Torres called out. "Movement in the South Valley. Looks like they're trying to flank us." Bell made a quick tactical assessment. 6 confirmed enemy positions, possibly more. High ground advantage to the hostiles. limited ammunition, and no air support. The odds were impossible, but they had one advantage the enemy didn't know about. Maya was out there somewhere, and Bell had to trust that she would act when the time was right. "Defensive positions," he ordered. "Prepare for contact. And Martinez, start broadcasting on all frequencies. Let them know we're here." Martinez looked at him as if he'd lost his mind. "Sir, that will compromise our position. They already know where we are. But maybe someone else is listening too." As if summoned by his words, the first shots rang out. High-powered rifles firing from multiple positions with deadly accuracy. Bell's team dove for cover as bullets shattered the rocks around them. "Return fire!" Bell shouted, but even as he took aim at the nearest muzzle flash, he knew they were outgunned. The enemy had superior positioning and unlimited ammunition. This was going to be a massacre. Morrison cried out as a bullet grazed his arm. Walsh rolled behind a boulder, her rifle answering with precise 3-round bursts. Torres was trying to get a radio signal through the jamming, his voice increasingly desperate. "Base, this is Bravo team. We are under heavy fire. Grid coordinates 147 to 892. Requesting immediate extraction." Static answered him. Bell closed his eyes and whispered the prayer that had become his lifeline. "Maya, if you're still out there, we need you now." The enemy fire intensified, coming from new positions. They were being systematically surrounded, their defensive perimeter shrinking with each passing minute. Bell counted at least 12 different weapons now, possibly more. Then, just as he was beginning to lose hope, he heard a sound that made his heart skip a beat. The deep, authoritative crack of a .50 caliber rifle fired from somewhere high above their position. One of the enemy muzzle flashes went silent immediately. "Did you hear that?" Walsh called out. Another shot, this one from a different angle. A second enemy position went quiet. Bell felt tears in his eyes as he recognized the tactical pattern. Maya was moving between prepared positions, using the terrain to her advantage, systematically eliminating threats with single, precise shots. Just like she taught him to do 10 years ago. "Ghost recon protocol," he whispered to himself. "One shot, one ghost." The enemy fire began to falter as their snipers realized they were being hunted by someone far more skilled than they were. Bell could hear shouting in the distance, orders being given, panic setting in. A third shot echoed across the valley. Then a fourth. "Someone's up there," Torres said in amazement. "Someone's taking them out one by one." Bell raised his binoculars, scanning the ridgeline where the shots were coming from. For just a moment, he caught a glimpse of movement, a figure in camouflage gear, moving with fluid grace between positions. Maya. After 10 years of wondering, of hoping, of chasing shadows and following legends, she was really there. Still. Alive, still fighting, still protecting soldiers like him. The realization filled him with such overwhelming emotion that he almost forgot where he was. Then Walsh grabbed his arm. "Sir, they're pulling back. The enemy's retreating." Bell looked down at the valley below and saw hostile forces abandoning their positions, moving quickly away from the area. They'd realized they were being outmatched by a superior sniper and had decided to cut their losses. Within minutes, the shooting stopped entirely. The silence that followed was deafening. "All clear," Morrison reported, his voice filled with wonder. "Threat eliminated." Bell stood up slowly, his legs shaking from adrenaline and emotion. He raised his binoculars once more, scanning the ridgeline where the shots had come from. Nothing. Maya had vanished as suddenly as she'd appeared, leaving only the evidence of her intervention. 7 confirmed enemy kills, each one a testament to her legendary skill. But as Bell lowered his binoculars, he noticed something that made his heart race. On a prominent rock formation, clearly visible from their position, someone had placed a small object, a military ammunition box, the kind used to leave messages in the field. Bell knew with absolute certainty that Maya had left it for him. After 10 years of separation, she was finally ready to make contact. Bell waited until nightfall before making his move. His team had established a secure perimeter and were rotating watch schedules, but he needed to reach that ammunition box without alerting them to his true purpose. They were good soldiers, but they wouldn't understand what this meant to him. At 0200 hours, during Torres's watch shift, Bell slipped out of the camp. He moved carefully through the darkness, using the terrain features Maya had taught him to read years ago. Every shadow, every sound, every breath of wind carried significance in these mountains. The ammunition box was exactly where he'd seen it, positioned on a flat rock that would be visible from multiple angles, but accessible only to someone who knew the proper approach route. Classic Maya, tactically sound, but personal enough to send a message. Bell's hand shook as he opened the box. Inside, wrapped in military-grade waterproof material, was a single sheet of paper covered in Maya's distinctive handwriting. "David, I know you've been looking for me. I've been watching your career, your promotions, your missions. You turned into exactly the kind of soldier I always knew you could be. I'm sorry for what happened 10 years ago. I'm sorry I let you think I was dead. But I couldn't come back. Not after what I learned. The ambush that killed my team wasn't random. We were betrayed by someone in our own command structure. Someone who sold our position to the enemy for reasons I'm still trying to understand. I stayed behind to investigate, to find out who was responsible. What I discovered would shock you. The corruption goes deeper than you can imagine, David. People we trusted, people we served under, people who sent us into those mountains knowing we wouldn't come back. I've been fighting my own war for 10 years, gathering evidence, protecting soldiers like you, trying to expose the truth. But I can't do it alone anymore. If you're reading this, it means you're ready to help me finish what we started. But I need to know you're willing to go all the way. Some of the people involved are still in positions of power. Some of them might be people you respect. Are you prepared for that? Are you prepared to learn that the military you've served faithfully might have betrayed you before you even knew it? If the answer is yes, return to base and request the classified files on Operation Sandstorm. Tell them you need to review the mission parameters for a training exercise. When you see what's in those files, you'll understand why I never came home. And David, thank you for believing in me. It's meant more than you know. Your friend, Maya. P.S. Burn this message after you read it. Some secrets are too dangerous for paper. Bell read the message 3 times, each reading bringing new revelations and deeper questions. Maya hadn't just survived. She'd been conducting her own investigation for a decade, uncovering corruption at the highest levels of military command. But what was Operation Sandstorm? Bell had never heard of it, despite his security clearance and access to classified materials. If Maya thought it was connected to her team's betrayal, it had to be something significant. He pulled out his lighter and watched the paper burn, the flames casting dancing shadows on the rock face. As the last corner turned to ash, Bell felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. Maya was trusting him with information that could destroy careers, end lives, and shake the foundation of everything he believed about military service. But she was also giving him the chance to finally bring justice to the soldiers who died in that ambush 10 years ago. Bell made his way back to camp, his mind racing with possibilities. He would have to be careful, methodical. If Maya was right about the corruption, then requesting those files would put him on someone's radar. He would need to be prepared for the consequences. The next morning, Bell's team completed their reconnaissance mission without further incident. The helicopter extraction went smoothly, and they were back at base by noon. but Bell barely noticed the routine debriefing or the congratulations on a successful mission. His thoughts were entirely focused on getting access to those files. It took him 3 days to work up the courage to make the request. He approached Major Kane's office during lunch hour, when most of the administrative staff would be away from their desks. "Rob, I need a favor," Bell said, closing the door behind him. Kane looked up from his sandwich, immediately alert to the serious tone in Bell's voice. "What kind of favor?" "I need access to the classified files on Operation Sandstorm for a training exercise I'm developing." Kane's expression didn't change, but Bell saw his knuckles whiten as he gripped his coffee cup. "I'm not familiar with that operation, David. What's the time frame?" "Approximately 10 to 12 years ago. Special operations, probably Ghost Recon, or similar units." Kane set down his cup carefully. "Why that specific operation?" Bell had prepared for this question, but he still felt nervous as he delivered his rehearsed response. "I'm developing a scenario based on historical precedents. Operations that went wrong, lessons learned, that kind of thing." "And you specifically need Sandstorm?" "It was referenced in some other files I've been reviewing. I just want to make sure I have the complete picture." Kane studied Bell's face for a long moment. "You know, I can't just hand you classified files without proper justification. What's this really about, David?" Bell realized he was at a crossroads. He could maintain the deception, keep pushing for access through official channels, and risk getting nowhere. Or he could trust Kane with the truth, knowing that his friend might not believe him. "Maya's alive, Rob. I've been in contact with her." Kane's reaction was immediate and unmistakable. His face went pale, and his hands began to tremble slightly. "That's impossible. Maya Rodriguez died 10 years ago in the Wadi Mountains. She survived. She's been operating independently, gathering intelligence on the people who betrayed her team. She wants me to look into Operation Sandstorm." Kane stood up abruptly, walked to his office window, and stared out at the parade ground. For several minutes, he didn't speak. When he finally turned around, his expression was grim. "David, if Maya is really alive, if she's been investigating what I think she's been investigating, then you're both in more danger than you realize. You know about Sandstorm?" Kane nodded slowly. "I know enough to understand why she never came home. And I know enough to realize that if you start asking questions about it, you might not make it home either." Bell felt a chill run down his spine. "What are you talking about?" Kane walked to his desk and locked his office door. Then he turned to face Bell with the expression of a man who'd been carrying a terrible secret for far too long. "Operation Sandstorm wasn't just a mission, David. It was a cover-up. And the people responsible are still out there, still in positions of power, still willing to kill to protect their secrets." "What secrets?" Kane met his eyes with a look of profound sadness. "The kind that destroy everything you believe in. About duty, honor, and country. The kind that make you understand why someone like Maya would choose to disappear rather than serve in a system that betrayed her." Bell felt the ground shifting beneath his feet. "I need to know the truth, Rob. I owe it to Maya, and I owe it to the soldiers who died." Kane was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a key. "There's a storage facility off base. Unit 247. This key will get you inside. Everything you need to know about Sandstorm is in there." "Why do you have this?" "Because I was part of the cover-up, David, and I've been living with the guilt ever since." Bell stared at his friend, seeing him in an entirely different light. "You knew Maya was alive?" "I suspected. There were too many coincidences, too many reports of mysterious interventions in the mountains. But I didn't know for sure until now." Kane's voice was filled with regret. "I should have done something sooner. I should have spoken up when it mattered." Bell took the key, feeling its weight in his hand. "It's not too late, Rob. We can still make this right." Kane shook his head. Once you read those files, there's no going back. You'll understand why Maya chose to stay dead, and you'll have to decide whether you're willing to risk everything to bring the truth to light. Belle pocketed the key and stood up. She's been risking everything for 10 years. The least I can do is return the favor. As he left Kane's office, Belle realized that his life was about to change forever. Maya had spent a decade gathering evidence, preparing for this moment. Now it was up to him to help her finish what she'd started, even if it meant discovering that everything he believed about his military service was a lie. The storage facility was located in a run-down part of town, the kind of place where nobody asked questions and cash was the only currency that mattered. Val arrived at midnight, when the streets were empty and the security cameras were just shadows against the darkness. Unit 247 was near the back of the complex, hidden behind rows of identical metal doors. Val's hands shook as he inserted Kane's key into the lock. Whatever was inside had been important enough for Kane to risk his career hiding it, important enough for Maya to spend 10 years investigating. The door rolled up with a grinding screech that seemed impossibly loud in the silence. Bell stepped inside and pulled the door closed behind him before turning on his flashlight. The beam revealed a small room filled with filing cabinets, boxes of documents, and what appeared to be surveillance equipment. A handwritten note was taped to the nearest filing cabinet. David, start with the red folder. The rest will make sense after that. Bell found the red folder on top of the first cabinet. Inside were photocopied pages from official military reports, satellite images, and transcripts of radio communications. As he read, the blood drained from his face. Operation Sandstorm had been a weapons trafficking scheme orchestrated by Colonel Harrison, his current commanding officer, and 2 other high-ranking officials. They had been selling advanced military equipment to hostile forces in exchange for millions in untraceable payments. Maya's Ghost Recon team had stumbled onto evidence of the operation during their final mission. The radio transcripts made Bell's stomach turn. Harrison had personally given Maya's team coordinates that he knew would lead them into an ambush. The enemy had been waiting, armed with the exact weapons Harrison had sold them. Maya's entire team had been sacrificed to protect a criminal conspiracy, but Maya had survived, and she'd been gathering evidence ever since. Bell opened the second folder and found surveillance photos of Harrison meeting with known arms dealers, bank records showing suspicious transfers to offshore accounts, recorded phone conversations discussing eliminating the Rodriguez problem. Harrison wasn't just corrupt. He was actively hunting Maya. Every training exercise in the Wadi Mountains, every patrol that ventured into her territory, was part of his systematic effort to locate and eliminate the one witness who could destroy him. Bell realized with growing horror that his own recent mission had been part of Harrison's plan. The colonel had used Bell as bait, hoping to draw Maya out of hiding so his operatives could kill her. The final folder contained Maya's own intelligence. Reports, written in her distinctive handwriting. She'd identified 3 other officers involved in the conspiracy, documented dozens of illegal weapons transfers, and compiled enough evidence to send Harrison and his associates to prison for life. But she'd also discovered something else. Harrison had allies in the Justice Department and the Inspector General's office. Traditional channels for reporting the corruption had been compromised. Anyone who tried to expose Operation Sandstorm through official means would be silenced before they could testify. Maya's final report, dated just 2 weeks earlier, outlined a plan to bypass the corrupted system entirely. She wanted to release the evidence directly to the press, simultaneously contacting journalists at multiple news outlets to prevent the story from being suppressed. But she needed help. After 10 years in hiding, she had no contacts in the media, no way to verify which journalists could be trusted. She needed someone with an official military background to give credibility to Her claims. She needed Belle. A separate note, written in Maya's hand, was clipped to the back of the folder. David, if you're reading this, Rob finally decided to trust someone with the truth. Harrison knows I'm getting close to exposing him. He's planning something big, something that will eliminate me permanently and tie up all the loose ends. I estimate we have 48 to 72 hours before he makes his move. I'll be monitoring radio frequencies for your signal. When you're ready to act, broadcast Crossfire requests immediate extraction on the old Ghost Recon emergency channel. I'll find you. But be warned, once we start this, there's no going back. Harrison will kill us both rather than let this story come out. Are you prepared for that? Maya Bell sat back in the small chair, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what he'd learned. Harrison, the man who'd promoted him, who'd trusted him with sensitive missions, who'd acted as a mentor for the past 3 years, was responsible for the deaths of Maya's entire team. He was a traitor, a murderer, and a criminal who'd been using his position to profit from the deaths of American soldiers. But more immediately, Maya was in danger. Harrison was planning to kill her within the next few days, and Belle was possibly the only person who could help her survive. Belle spent the next 2 hours reviewing every document in the storage unit, memorizing names, dates, and details. By the time he finished, he had a complete understanding of the conspiracy and Maya's plan to expose it. He also understood why Kane had been living with guilt for so many years. According to the files, Kane had been present during some of the early weapons transfers, but had been told they were part of an authorized special operations mission. By the time he realized the truth, Maya's team was already dead, and Harrison had made it clear that anyone who spoke up would face the same fate. Kane had chosen silence over death, but he'd also chosen to preserve the evidence in case someone else was brave enough to act on it. Now that someone was Belle, as he prepared to leave the storage facility, Belle made a decision that would change everything. He would contact Maya, help her expose Harrison's crimes, and ensure that justice was finally served for the soldiers who died 10 years ago. But first, he had to survive Harrison's inevitable retaliation. Belle locked the storage unit and drove back to base, his mind racing with plans and contingencies. He would need to be careful, strategic. Harrison was a master manipulator who'd stayed one step ahead of investigators for a decade. One wrong move, and both Belle and Maya would join the list of soldiers who died to protect Operation Sandstorm. But as Belle thought about Maya, alone in those mountains for 10 years, fighting a war that everyone else thought was over, he felt a surge of determination. She'd never given up on seeking justice for her fallen teammates. She'd never stopped protecting soldiers like him, even when it meant sacrificing her own life and career. Now it was his turn to protect her. Belle reached for his radio and tuned it to the old Ghost Recon emergency frequency. His finger hovered over the transmit button as he considered the magnitude of what he was about to do. Once he sent this signal, there would be no turning back. Harrison would become his enemy. The military would become a battlefield, and Maya would emerge from the shadows to fight alongside him. But for the first time in 10 years, she wouldn't be fighting alone. Belle pressed the transmit button and spoke the words that would change everything. Crossfire, this is Eagle, requesting immediate extraction. The truth needs to come home. Maya's response came within 6 hours, transmitted on a frequency that changed every 30 seconds to avoid detection. Her voice was older, weathered by a decade of isolation, but unmistakably the same woman who'd trained Belle years ago. Eagle, this is Crossfire. Confirm you've reviewed the Sandstorm files. Confirmed. I know everything. Harrison, the weapons deals, the betrayal. It's time to end this. Negative, Eagle. Harrison knows you accessed those files. He's moving to eliminate both of us within 24 hours. This is bigger than you realize. Bell felt ice form in his stomach. What do you mean? Kane's been compromised. Harrison has surveillance on his communications, his office, probably his home. The moment you took that key, they knew you were involved. Bell closed his eyes, realizing the trap he'd walked into. Kane's sudden willingness to help, the convenient storage unit, the perfectly organized evidence, it had all been too easy. Harrison had been using Kane as bait for months, waiting for someone to approach him about Maya. Kane's not corrupt, Maya continued. But Harrison's been monitoring him, waiting for exactly this scenario. They know you have the evidence, and they know you're in contact with me. We have maybe 12 hours before they move against us. What's the plan? There is no plan, David. Not anymore. Harrison's called in favors with Special Operations Command. There's an official kill order being processed right now, classifying me as a rogue operative who's been selling intelligence to hostile forces. You'll be listed as an accomplice who was compromised during your contact with me. Bell felt the world spinning around him. They can't just murder American soldiers. They've been doing it for 10 years. The difference now is that they're running out of time. I'm close to exposing the full extent of their operation, and they know it. So what do we do? Maya's voice softened, and for a moment, Bell heard the mentor he'd known and trusted. We do what we trained to do, David. We fight, but not the way they expect. I'm listening. Harrison's planning to eliminate us during a staged rescue operation. He'll send a team into the mountains, claiming they're trying to extract you from a hostile situation. When the shooting stops, we'll both be dead, and the official report will say we were killed by enemy forces while conducting unauthorized operations. How do you know all this? Because I've been monitoring his communications for 3 months. Harrison thinks he's been hunting me, but I've been watching him the entire time. I know his plans, his resources, his timeline. Bell felt a spark of hope, so we can stop him. Not stop him. Expose him. Live on television, in front of witnesses he can't silence or intimidate. But it means abandoning any hope of working within the system. Once we do this, we'll both be wanted fugitives. What do you need me to do? Maya's instructions were precise and detailed. Bell was to request an emergency meeting with several high-ranking officers, including Harrison, under the pretense of providing critical intelligence about hostile activities in the Wadi Mountains. During that meeting, Maya would present the evidence via live video link to news outlets she'd secretly contacted. The key is simultaneous exposure, Maya explained. Harrison can silence individual journalists, but he can't stop 5 different news organizations from broadcasting at the same time. Once the story breaks, he'll be too busy trying to save himself to worry about killing us. And if the plan fails, then we die knowing we tried to bring justice to the soldiers Harrison murdered. It's more than they got. Bell spent the rest of the day preparing for what might be his final mission. He organized the evidence, memorized the key points Maya would need to present, and wrote letters to his family explaining his actions. If everything went wrong, at least someone would know the truth. The meeting was scheduled for 1400 hours in the base's main conference room. Bell arrived early, positioning himself where he could see everyone who entered. Harrison arrived precisely on time, accompanied by 2 officers Bell didn't recognize, probably the special operations personnel Maya had warned him about. Captain. Bell, Harrison said, his voice carrying false warmth. I understand you have urgent intelligence to share. Yes, sir. Critical information about enemy operations in the Wadi Mountains. Harrison's eyes were cold, calculating. Bell realized that the colonel had probably been planning this moment for weeks, maybe months. Proceed with your briefing. Bell activated the conference room's video system and established the connection Maya had prepared. Her face appeared on the main screen, older and harder than Belle remembered, but alive and determined. "Good afternoon, gentlemen," Maya said. "My name is Maya Rodriguez, call sign Crossfire. I was declared killed in action 10 years ago, but as you can see, reports of my death have been greatly exaggerated." Harrison's face went pale, then flushed with rage. "Cut that connection immediately." "I'm afraid I can't do that, sir," Belle said. "This briefing is being broadcast live to 5 news organizations simultaneously. Any attempt to stop it will only confirm the allegations." Maya continued her presentation, methodically outlining Harrison's crimes with supporting evidence. Displayed on screen: bank records, surveillance photos, recorded conversations, everything Kane had preserved in that storage unit, plus 3 years of additional intelligence Maya had gathered. Harrison stood up abruptly. "This is treason. Captain Bell is working with a rogue operative who's been selling secrets to enemy forces." "Actually, Colonel," Maya said, "I have recordings of you selling those secrets. Would you like me to play them?" The room erupted in chaos as Harrison realized his carefully constructed cover story was crumbling in real time. The 2 special operations officers moved toward the conference room exits, probably to coordinate damage control. Other attendees were shouting questions, demanding explanations. But Bell only had eyes for the video screen, where Maya was calmly presenting evidence that would destroy Harrison's life and career. After 10 years of hiding, she was finally telling her story to the world. In conclusion, Maya said, Operation Sandstorm was a criminal conspiracy that resulted in the deaths of 12 American soldiers, including my entire team. The evidence I've presented today proves that Colonel Harrison and his associates committed treason, murder, and theft of military resources. I call upon the appropriate authorities to immediately arrest all individuals involved in this conspiracy. Harrison pulled out his sidearm and pointed it at Bell. "End this transmission now, or I'll kill you where you sit." Bell smiled grimly. "Too late, sir. The story's already out. Killing me won't change that." Maya's voice came through the speakers. "One final time. David, it's been an honor serving with you. Thank you for believing in me." The screen went black, but Bell knew Maya's work was complete. Within hours, the story would be on every news channel in the country. Harrison's crimes would be exposed. Justice would finally be served, and Maya could emerge from the shadows after 10 years of exile. Harrison kept his weapon trained on Bell, but his hand was shaking. "You have no idea what you've done. You've destroyed everything." "No, sir," Bell said quietly. "I've finally done something right." 6 months later, Bell stood on Crossfire Ridge as the morning sun painted the mountains in shades of gold and amber. The military tribunal had concluded 3 weeks earlier, resulting in life sentences for Harrison and his conspirators. Maya's evidence had been overwhelming, her testimony unshakable. But the personal cost had been enormous. Bell's military career was over, ended by court-martial proceedings that found him guilty of insubordination and unauthorized disclosure of classified information. The fact that his actions had exposed a massive conspiracy didn't matter to the military justice system. He'd broken the chain of command and violated direct orders. Maya had fared better legally, but worse personally. She'd been granted full immunity in exchange for her testimony, and the military had quietly restored her rank and benefits. But she declined their offer to return to active duty. 10 years in the wilderness had changed her in ways that couldn't be undone. "You're early," Maya said, approaching from the tree line with the silent grace Bell remembered from their training days. She looked healthier than she had during the trial. The constant stress of hiding had lifted, replaced by something resembling peace. "Couldn't sleep," Bell admitted. "Still getting used to civilian life." Maya sat beside him on the rocky outcrop, where she once conducted sniper training, Any regrets? Bell considered the question seriously. He'd lost his career, his pension, and most of his military friends who viewed him as a traitor. But he'd also helped bring justice to 12 murdered soldiers and stopped a criminal conspiracy that had operated for over a decade. None, he said finally. What about you? Any regrets about staying hidden for so long? Maya was quiet for several minutes, watching the sun climb higher above the peaks. I used to think I stayed because I was seeking justice. But I think I really stayed because I was afraid to face what I'd lost. My team, my career, my faith in the system I'd served. It was easier to be a ghost than to be Maya Rodriguez. And now I know that some things are worth losing everything for. The truth, justice, protecting the people who can't protect themselves. She looked at Belle with a slight smile. Having someone believe in you when you've stopped believing in yourself. Belle felt a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the morning sun. So what's next? The government offered you any job you want. Full retirement at your current rank. Pretty generous for someone they declared dead 10 years ago. Maya shook her head. I'm done with official channels. Too many good soldiers died because people in power made corrupt decisions. I want to do something that actually helps veterans, something that can't be compromised by politics or bureaucracy. Such as? I'm starting a non-profit organization. Advocacy for veterans who've been failed by the system, investigation of military corruption, support for soldiers who want to report wrongdoing but are afraid of retaliation. Maya's voice grew stronger as she spoke. I want to make sure no one else has to choose between staying silent and losing everything. Belle nodded approvingly. That sounds like the Maya Rodriguez I remember. Always fighting for the underdog. I'll need help. Someone with recent military experience. Someone who understands how the system works. Someone who's proven they're willing to do the right thing regardless of personal cost. Belle understood what she was asking. Are you offering me a job? I'm offering you a mission. No uniforms, no ranks, no official authority. Just a chance to help people who need it and make sure the truth doesn't get buried by bureaucrats and politicians. Belle looked out over the valley where they'd both nearly died, where Maya had spent 10 years protecting soldiers who never knew she existed. It wasn't the life he'd planned, but it was the life he'd chosen when he decided to believe in her. When do we start? Maya stood up and extended her hand to help him to his feet. We already have. I've been getting calls from veterans who heard about the trial, who have their own stories about corruption and cover-ups. Soldiers who were told to stay quiet, families who were lied to about how their loved ones died. It's going to be dangerous work. The people we'll be investigating have resources, connections, the ability to make problems disappear. The good thing we've had practice dealing with dangerous situations, Maya said with the first genuine smile Belle had seen from her in years. As they walked down the mountain together, Belle felt something he hadn't experienced in months. Hope. The military had been his life for 15 years, but maybe this new mission would be even more important. Instead of following orders from corrupt officials, he'd be answering directly to the soldiers and families who needed justice. One question, Belle said as they reached the parking area where Maya's Jeep was waiting. Are you going to keep using the call sign Crossfire? Maya considered this seriously. I think Maya Rodriguez deserves a chance to exist again. But Crossfire will always be there when she's needed. Belle smiled as he climbed into the passenger seat. Then let's go find out who needs us. As they drove away from the mountains that had defined both their lives, Belle realized that Maya had been right about something she'd said during her testimony. Home wasn't the place, it was where you were needed most. For 10 years, Maya had been needed on that ridge, protecting soldiers who couldn't protect themselves. Now she was needed elsewhere, fighting a different kind of war against a different kind of enemy. And for the first time since this whole ordeal began, Bell knew exactly where he belonged, fighting alongside the best soldier he'd ever known, protecting the people who'd sworn to protect everyone else. Maya Rodriguez had finally come home. But more importantly, she'd brought hope with her, hope for justice, hope for truth, and hope that sometimes the good guys really do win. Even if it takes 10 years and costs them everything. 6 months later, their organization had helped expose 3 cases of military contractor fraud, secured justice for a veteran who'd been wrongfully discharged, and provided legal support for whistleblowers in 4 different branches of service. Maya never returned to the mountains, but Bell sometimes caught her staring at old photos of Crossfire Ridge with an expression of profound peace. She'd finally found a way to honor her fallen teammates that didn't require her to disappear from the world. And late at night, when they were working on particularly difficult cases, Bell would hear her whisper the old motto under her breath: one shot, one ghost. But now it meant something different. One opportunity to help someone who needed it. One chance to expose corruption before it could claim more victims. One ghost from the past who'd chosen to return and make the future better for everyone. Maya Rodriguez was no longer missing in action. She was exactly where she was supposed to be, home, fighting for the soldiers who'd never stopped believing in her. And that, Bell realized, was the most perfect ending he could have imagined. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and become a part of our Everyday Life Stories community. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment below. We love hearing from our amazing viewers around the world.